my mother was a storyteller and a craftswoman. And one thing that she left with me that helped me in this journey was her anecdote of whenever she started a weaving project, she would weave mats and baskets and all that. But the analogy that I loved the most was when she started weaving her mats, she would call all of us and tell us a story as if she's never told it before. And this would be every time she starts a new mat. She would say, it's a great idea to sit on your old mat to weave your new one, because that way you see the patterns and the mistakes that you have made in your old one. She would also add with a cautious voice, but you have to remember that you are the one sitting on the mat. Don't be carried away with an old mat or a new one. Remember, you are the creator sitting on the mat creating.
Born and raised in the motherland, chasing a better life. Story of an immigrant.
Concrete pastures.
Concrete pastures.
Concrete pastures.
Hello, family. You are listening to Concrete Pastures. I am Nancy Mulemwa-Sisi. Being an immigrant has been one of the most challenging and extraordinary experiences of my life. It inspired me to create a platform to reach out to my fellow immigrants and dreamers. The goal is to provide a space for myself and others to share our stories as we deconstruct the world's view of immigrant status. We discuss issues that are important to us in the diaspora. We celebrate the joys, the laughs, the bravery that being an immigrant brings. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We appreciate your support. To all of our new listeners, welcome to the family. You can continue to support us by downloading our new app for free on Google Play. You get access to our whole Concrete Pastures library. And while you are there, we are an independent podcast. You can support us by giving us a donation or buying our merchandise. 50% of the proceedings, they go back to our veteran that makes them. I want to thank each and every one of you for reaching out, sending so many emails and DMs to inquire about our integrating services. We do have integrating services. If you are someone or know someone who's coming to the US of A and are looking to have a resource on how to integrate in New York City, we are here to help you integrate fully. We do provide a wrapped around service based on your needs. Each client has different needs. Maybe just housing, job, whatever it is, feel free to reach out. I'll have the link in the show notes. We are here to support you in your new journey. Thank you to FMG Radio for continuing to give us visibility on their platform. On today's guest, I am super duper grateful to Aaron for connecting me to our next guest. You're going to need a pen and paper. I have to say that right away. She is giving us a lot of wisdom. Mariam Issa is a visionary storyteller, a life coach, an author, a community builder, and an educator holding diversity in a unified vision. She's committed to offering tools to be more tuned skillfully together. She has a potent understanding of diversity, which shines a fierce light to all issues she embraces, weaving her African heritage and her creed, Islam, into contemporary expressions of faith, inviting all to her table of compassionate conversations. She has honed and distilled her unique memories to support others to tap into their inner reservoir and resourcefulness. Welcome, Ms. Mariam. How are you?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nancy, for having me. I feel very, very grateful, but also very humbled to be invited in this beautiful space. Thank you again.
It's an honor to
thank you too. Yeah. And thank you to all our listeners. I think it's such a privilege to come together to share stories. I think that's what we're all about as African. Our traditions, come from oral cultures. We are really big in storytelling, and especially the eastern part of Africa where I come from. Somalia, the language wasn't written until 1972. So we are very oral tradition. And our elders, imparted their knowledge or seeded us through storytelling. And stories, as we all know, can uplift a community, but it also heals a community. And I think when we come to new places, sharing our stories, being vulnerable with it, and holding space for each other is such a powerful tool. And element and that is needed in our world today, because we do have a world that is absolutely in chaos, that is demanding that women tell stories. We are the conduits of compassion, the womb of creation, the mothers who tell stories. And I think as we tell our stories, we are also reforming our stories, and we are curating and creating it in a way that is sustainable for the new world that we live in. So that is what we're here, for. Nancy and I would navigate.
You get me excited already. I'm excited. Okay, you already started. I'm a sponge. I'm already absorbing everything you're saying. So walk us through how life was in Somalia. So for anybody who doesn't know where Somalia is, it's in Africa, the Horn of Africa.
Yes.
Yes.
So and both my parents actually trekked to the sub-Saharan deserts of Africa. They were nomads. So I am not only Somali, but I'm Kenyan too. So I came to my father was exiled from Somalia for political reasons in 1970, and we came to Kenya in 1971. I was only 4 years old, so I grew up in Kenya. So I'm holding these two cultures that are absolutely different, but also very similar in many ways. So I came, but then when I got a bit older, I was married back to Somalia, and that's how I became a refugee from Somalia back to Kenya and now in Australia. So that's the journey I think that we will navigate a little bit, but I do have a book called A Resilient Life, which I do share my stories. And because I have been in Australia for 24 years now, I feel like the woman that I was when I came here is kind of fading away in the distance, because we're always evolving in the making, and we're becoming new people, So a little bit about my journey as a refugee. I was the first refugee people who left Somalia in 1991 when the civil war struck. And at the time I was only 23 years old. I was pregnant with my third child. I had 2 young children in a boat that, was living home with 140 refugees. And I don't even really think that in the world that we live in today, that could be called a boat that was sustainable to take people from one destination to another. So we did survive, I think, with, the grace of God. And through that journey, I learned a lot of things. One of the things that was really, remains in my mind is the power in faith and hope. When you're suspended in the middle of the ocean and you have no idea whether you are going to survive this incredible safari, the call out of something within you that calls out to the source from which we all come, and we call God, or, whatever other people might call it. But then you just realize that deep faith is deeply ingrained in you. So I do come from the Islamic traditions, and I did have that faith in the sense of an Islamic way, but I think it becomes even more than that when in times of hope and in times of such, a big adversity strikes. So that was one of the learning, but the other learning that was really remains in my mind today, and maybe, at that time was a seed planted in my head, was the power in women's leadership. Because in that small boat, there was this total stranger, a woman who was to me at the time an older woman, like a mother figure, who just stood up and took charge of that boat. She knew that we didn't have much food and much water in the boat, so she started to really utilize the resources that we had. And she took me on, her fold, and she was like, we don't have any time to waste. Just stand up, Mariam, and let's be the leaders here. And I think that did something for me in understanding that there are incredible leaders who necessarily don't have titles. So some of the work that I do these days is leaders with no titles. Like I wake up women into their, innate leadership. Mm-hmm. And so that taught me so much. And from there on, I think I just always was on the lookout of where support was needed, where service was needed, where I was called into. So coming to us, to Kenya and being displaced for 8 years, it was a tumultuous journey. It was not easy. I had another child, 2 children along the way, that journey. So by the time I came to Australia, I had 4 children and I was pregnant with my 5th child.
How long did the journey take?
The journey of displacement was 8 years. What do you mean? The journey from Kenya to Australia?
Yeah.
Oh, that was by air, so it didn't take much. We came via Zimbabwe, so it was just an easy journey.
Oh, great. Okay.
And because I was from, I came to the system and I was resettled easily, so my journey was actually easy. Compared to later on when I started working with refugees and asylum seekers in Australia. So we were placed, it's incredible how the universe just finds a place for you. And I was placed in a very white and affluent suburb in the heart of Melbourne.
Wow.
So that's where my real journey of understanding, or maybe of why I'm here as a human being, maybe on this earth, and my calling started for me.
So you get to Australia, and how are you received, I guess, in a way, as a refugee woman with your fellow refugees? How are you guys received? And what is the process?
Yeah, so the transition was, from a perspective of system-wise, was very easy. We were transitioned into, we were given a home straight away. We placed the children into schools. But as you know, these days I call culture a currency. You come, I think my family and I came with a deflated, currency. And when you come into a currency that is stronger than yours, you cannot trade much with it. And when you're given the currency of the people that you are among, you don't know how to trade with it, because I knew nothing about the Western culture. And, the other thing that was really hard are the assumptions usually made about you. To these people, you're a black person, you are a refugee, and then, 2 years later, the September 11 happened, and I was wearing the Islamic gear, and I became a Muslim woman. So all these labels are put on you, and there's all these assumptions made about you, but are not voiced. And there's no way that you can say anything about anything, although you're feeling a certain way, you cannot defend yourself. So I think that's the hardest bit. Those assumptions. And of course, there is racism. Of course, there are people who don't understand your culture, and nobody knows you, and you don't have a friend, you don't have family. So it's just navigating a way in which you want to make this your community. But I think it didn't even strike me that way. I was living in the heart of the community, but I was also away from the community. because I was mingling with my own African cultures and I was going to more of where the community was. And when the September 11 happened, there was an added pressure into that. There was a lot of fear. So I took my children out of the normal schools and into an Islamic school, which was communing for 40 minutes every day, 40 minutes going and 40 minutes back. And then I had to also pay private school fees, which we didn't at the time really could afford. And on top of that, I think it was just like all these pressures that people were now, it was amidst another kind of a Cold War. Nothing is being voiced, but then, Islam is perceived in the West as a religion that is of destruction. We started again, and to me, I became very fearful. But in that time, my youngest daughter, who was born in the heart of the community, reached the age of kinder. So I thought that I wasn't going to commune with her. I will just take her to a normal kinder because she's just a child. Yeah. And we went to look for a kinder around our area. And when we got out, nothing bad was really said, but it was a very frosty reception. And my daughter asked me a question that literally changed the trajectory of our family. She said, "Mom, did they not want me because I'm Black?" And the penny dropped for me then.
I just got chilled.
I realized, I realized that, whoa, this is, really big. And that I'm, stooped in fear. And so is my family. And what do I need to do now? And I think that actually gave me that incredible ability to be decisive and to make a decision that really changed everything. One, I realized that, I did not bring my children for them to have this kind of a relationship with the host country. I wanted opportunities for them. So I asked myself, is this what I came for? Do I want my children to always look, over their shoulder and think that they're less or they're not accepted here? So the answer was no. And if the answer is no, then what was I supposed to do in this space? So it's incredible what happens when we ask of the universe, incredible questions. When you ask a question that is powerful, a powerful answer comes to you. And the powerful answer that came to me was that I knew about community and how to interact with people. And then I became curious in this journey. So instead of that fear and all that, I started to really dismantle a few things for myself. So these are people. I can connect and I can start to understand the community. So I started to volunteer in schools, in community organizations, and just to really take an interest into my environment and make it home. Because I realized that, many of us come to a new country and we're always looking for going back home, whenever that might be.
Yeah.
So I felt that had to go, that this was home for me now, and that we can have a new beginning. And so that's where the reality of my story started from. And it was incredible what happened after that. Because becoming curious and starting to interact with people just started opening incredible doors for me.
Wow. Was this the birth of Raw?
It wasn't the birth of Raw. I started, so I also realized that, well, if my cultural currency is inflated, then it's up to me to give it power and to give it strength. So I started something called Cook with Mariam as a business. I became an entrepreneur in the journey. I started the business and had the business for 5 years. That's when I met Aaron. And so connecting with entrepreneurs, connecting with like-minded people and opening up my mind and wanting to know more really started to take me into the backyard of the people that I worked for. So I before I started the business, I worked as a cleaner in Brighton homes and in aged care centers, and, started interacting with the community. But what I realized during that time was also the fact that, amidst the beauty and the glory and the glamour in Brighton, there was a less apparent truth, because I cleaned homes, big, beautiful homes that nobody really lived in. I went into aged care centers and it did not make sense to me at all, because the elders of the community were kept away from the community and they were miserable. And then young children, were committing suicide. There was mental health. There was, family violence. So all these things, but it was covered with material.
Yeah.
And so it was not as apparent as our wars back home were. So then I realized that, well, I'm not here randomly. Nobody ever is anywhere randomly. So why am I here is the question I asked. So the why am I here question, I think, was the birth of Raw. That I'm here to learn about my individuality, because I've always lived in communal culture. And interacting with people made me understand that I did not know myself personally. So it was understanding this individual culture. And then inviting people to our communal culture. The culture of I am because you are, the Ubuntu spirit. So that's, why I was here. I was here to learn, and I was here to remember myself, but to also remind others about themselves.
That's so amazing that you can integrate, I guess, in a way that is so forgiving in a challenging environment like that.
Mm.
I was looking at your website. That's your daughter?
Yes, that's my daughter, Sumaya. Yes. I was pregnant with her when I was living in Somalia.
Wow. Her story is incredible. What have you learned? I know that she triggered a lot of things when she was younger. Through her story and her journey, I know you have your own story. What have you learned through her in a way that is, I guess, more giving? Because her story is very forgiving.
What I learned is, one, first of all, there's a lot of trauma that we carry with us, having gone through civil war, but also even way back that are never addressed in our African cultures. And the story of the mother and daughter, I think, is the story that needs mostly healing. That's how we have lost the matriarchal culture. And I think for us, in order to bring that back, our journeys have to be sitting at this intersection of intergenerational trauma and learning from our daughters, or the daughters learning from their mothers, how to be together, because we have actually really forgotten how to be together. And I know that during this journey of integration and coming to a new country and having our own struggles, a lot of, my children have lost the mother who would have otherwise have stayed at home and been, a more interactive mom. So in our journeys, there was a big gap, because all of a sudden my children are grown-ups and I'm, not so much as left behind, because I was in the journey of activism and all that, but it was a journey of not really understanding our story, not really curating it in the way that we want to have a meaningful life. So I think once we started having, before we became business partners, we had to really go through a lot of these traumas and address a lot of, problems that we had, because we didn't see eye to eye. One, first of all, she's an introvert and I'm an extrovert. Two, I come with a whole lot of, the African way of parenting, where she's in the West. So a lot of clash, a lot of our values clashed. So one of the hardest things was to really create boundary and learn how to, what are the values in which that we have that align, and how do we become business partners. I think that was, a really important kind of journey for us as well, to become, that partnership. One, we are, bonded through mother-daughter, but also now by a business. It was a really hard journey, and it still is evolving. So when we sit together and I allow my daughter's story to be hers, because it can never be my story.
Yeah.
And I know that my story is not my mother's story. Yeah. But what I'm proud of, and what any mother wants, is for her daughter to have a better story and to have a better way of weaving. And I think, one of the seeding that my mother was a storyteller and a craftswoman. And one thing that she left with me that helped me in this journey was her anecdote of whenever she started a weaving project, she would weave mats and baskets and all that. But the analogy that I loved the most was when she started weaving her mats, she would call all of us and tell us a story as if she's never told it before. And this would be every time she starts a new mat. She would say, "It's a great idea to sit on your old mat to weave your new one, because that way you see the patterns and the mistakes that you have made in your old one." And, she would also add with a cautious voice, "But you have to remember, that you are the one sitting on the mat. Don't be carried away with an old mat or a new one. Remember, you are the creator sitting on the mat creating." Wow. So that was a really, really powerful anecdote. Very powerful. And, I keep telling that story, although I'm not a weaver, to my daughters and to anybody who would listen to me, as, sit on your old mat to create your new one. But also remember that you are at that juxtaposition and that you are the creator. So by that, I learned that we can design and curate and shape our stories in the way we want to have a meaningful and fulfilling life. So, and understanding what does meaning mean for me, because what meaning means for me might not necessarily mean what it means for you. And we do this through the power of emotions, learning how we feel. And I think as a culture, especially our African cultures, we haven't been taught how to feel. We've always been told, and you suppress your feelings, and that's why everything becomes a trauma, So understanding and learning how we feel is so important. And that's how we curate.
You say something really, really important, because coming here and going through my journey as an immigrant, it was so much of suppressing, and until I started therapy, it's when I started to unlearn certain things and then unpacking certain things. It's amazing. I guess it's very, in a way, like our culture needs to change of how we suppress everything and just be toughen up or anything. You go through something, you need to toughen up. We don't talk about feelings, and everything needs to be just, you keep quiet and you keep it going. And that had been my tendency since I came here, and I'm glad that you're touching on it, that we keep doing this. And this is among all of our African community, all of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being an immigrant can be hard. Having been away from my home country for over 20 years has allowed me to experience these hardships firsthand. Throughout my journey, I've had a lot of challenges that were hard to bear. Juggling adjustment to a new country, obtaining my immigration papers, getting married, having children, establishing my career, and finding time for myself. Even though I've always had faith, I also relied on therapy, which gave me the tools to cope with the issues life brought me. My fellow dreamers, Let's remove the stigma around therapy and normalize seeking help with today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp offers licensed therapists who are trained to listen and help you. Go to betterhelp.com/concretepastures for 10% off your first month of therapy with BetterHelp and get matched with a therapist who will listen and help in as little as 48 hours.
And I'm now understanding that it's not just the African communities, but it's a worldwide phenomenon for women. You know, women have always been, you know, we have to keep it together. We give from an half empty cup or half full cup. I think we haven't been taught or haven't learned ourselves how to give from the overflow. And I think until we start giving from the overflow, until we learn how to sit with our pain and not run away from it or not, make it as if it doesn't exist, because it's the norm. You know, our family, that's how we were taught. This is normal. And we look back now and what was normal shocks me now.
Yes.
And I feel like, whoa, how was I in that relationship? Because I just finished a relationship of 32 years. And the hardest thing for me to do was forgive myself. Because in hindsight, you look at the plain truth and you think, I'm an intelligent woman. How was I in this relationship? But now I realize that was normalized. And it is very normal in African communities and many other communities. And then I see young people repeating the same trends. And I'm like, no, this is not true. This is not right.
Because we don't know it better unless we hear it from you. We hear it from all our older women telling us, generation to generation. So it just keeps on going. So for me, I'm very vocal with what I've gone through and being able to share that. And I'm just hoping that the journey continues, even for everybody who comes on this platform, to be able to be so open with their story, because there's somebody out there who needs it. They need to hear it. Like I am absorbing everything you're saying, because I'm just like, oh my God, yes, that's and
look, in the sharing of our stories, it doesn't have to be ugly, and it doesn't have, whatever your story is, you can hold it with dignity. Hold your story with dignity. You don't have to overshare anything, but work your story. Like, feel the pain, look at it, go for therapy, as you say.
It's the shame. It's the shame that everybody.
Yes, the shame. Yeah.
So we need to remove the shame that life happens for us, not to us, because that's. I think that's the biggest thing that we have back home, that everything just happens to us. Because for the longest I felt that way too. I had to unlearn that. I'm like, okay, life has just happened for me. I need to get up and move on, because life will continue to happen.
So life happens to us is the process of victimhood, and I think through grieving, I think that's a process. Like, oh poor me, that's a phase that you're in. It's the phase of depression. When you come out of that phase, you enter the phase of anger, where it's blame. You blame other people for your problems. But if you are not cautious between these two places, you will end up going back and forth. So the third phase is the phase you're talking about of empowerment. So that phase is where you take, the steering wheel or the reins of your journey. This is your journey. You are in your lane. You have to drive to the destination that is calling you. And how do we do that? There's a lot of fear in us. So we have to address that fear. We have to, it is sitting, let it sit next to you.
Yeah.
And then later on, put it at the back and allow yourself to really go for your, whatever your desires are. Because that fear, honestly, is never going to go away. Every time I stand in front of an audience, every time I'm starting a new project, it's always there because it's a fear of not trusting ourselves.
Yeah.
But we can learn to trust ourselves. And one of, when I started the conversation, I started with faith. I'm a life coach and an executive coach. So I sit with people and work with them through, their desires or whatever they want, their life goals. And one of the things that I do is give them tools. And one of the tools that I really want to leave with, and give to your audience today is faith. I love acronyms. Every word that I come across, I like making it as an acronym. Mm-hmm. And this acronym is very important because it's an acronym that is so valid in these times, because it's times of uncertainty. And we walk with faith, not with sight. Yeah. So what does faith mean? Faith, one, means you have to learn how to flow your feeling, the feeling of freedom. That's the first F, the feeling of freedom. And not the freedom of bondage, which is her service and we're bonded to each other, but learning to be free, the freedom of sovereignty. Your freedom that comes from within. The freedom of Nelson Mandela, a man who spent most of his life in jail, taught us how to be free. So learn to be free in sovereignty. The A stands for acceptance. You have to accept that this freedom is yours by right, by birthright, it's yours. And bringing acceptance to it, affirming it every day, and, appreciating it will make it concrete in your world. The I stands for intentional. You have to be very intentional with this freedom because it's yours. You can create whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
And it takes you into your intuition and it allows you to bring inspirations from that intuition. So that is, intentional, intuitive, and inspiration is born from this freedom. You have, the T is for transformative. You have to transform the stories that lie in your head. They're not true. Create different stories. Learn to be a creator with this and transcend the lethargic habits that is around you. And it's your time to really, really triumph and to find, the life that is meant for you. And the last letter I love because that brings you into balance and harmony. It's harmony. You generate happiness from within, and then that's where home is. That is the true home for you, that sovereign freedom. So find that faith. It's not a faith just by, that is given to you, by our maybe Islamic or Christian theology, or that faith has its place. And if you are a faithful woman who understands God, this goes hand in hand with that. Find that sovereignty within you. And I think when we do that is the only time that we can be free from this patriarchal system that has put us into systems and, structures that are so solid and that are so concrete that we cannot breathe anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to bring back the matriarchy. That's my journey. And we have to kill the patriarchy within ourselves.
Yeah.
I think the patriarchy will be dead when it's dead to us, but one individual at a time. We can't do it in a bigger way.
So what has been the impact when it comes to RAW? I know you're working with so many communities, the women, the refugees. What has been the impact in that community?
So, oh my God, the RAW Garden. So RAW, as you said, stands for Resilient Aspiring Women. And I saw that in a dream. And in the morning, that's what it translated to. But 3 months later, someone else told me, oh, if you read RAW backwards, it's war. And I realized, whoa, yes, it's about women letting go of the war inside to tap into their resilience and aspirations. So it was really meant to be. And by inviting people in, one of the things that I knew was missing for the community was trust. And I wanted women, especially, to women of community. And I wasn't distinguishing women of color or women of white women. I was just saying women. And at that time, I had watched the Liberian women's movement, who took Charles Taylor out of his, office into prison and brought in Salif. And then I understood the power that women had. Because every time he saw them, demonstrating, he was like, "These silly women, tell them to take the children out of the, Have you watched that movie?
Not yet. I'm going to watch it. I'm
oh my God, it's a beautiful documentary. It's called Pray the Devil Back to Hell.
Ooh.
Yes. And it showed me the power of women. And the Liberian Civil War was about Muslim and and Christian women. And the women joined and said, look, our children are being killed every day. The bullet doesn't distinguish between Muslim or Christian. Let's come together and create something that is concrete. And their mantra was, I want peace. So that is what, inspired me to create the Raw Garden. I was like, this is the power of women. And I want women to create peace and harmony in their communities. Because the more we share our stories and we have create a safe haven for us and we come in circles, then we can create that in our communities. And it's incredible what has happened from that. Because that was just an intention, and that intention became a big dream. And now I have a garden that has a pavilion in it, and a beautiful pavilion at that. And women from different cultural backgrounds come and share their stories and literally transform each other's lives by just sharing the story. And I think the intention, because I connected with the earth, when you connect to people and the earth, then that's where home is. So that became home for me. I started to respect the earth, the indigenous cultures that we live among, then started to bring other, all women together, and we sit in circles, we grow food together, we do cooking classes, we share stories. So we went back to the rawness and simplicity of life. I think universities and PhDs and all that make life complicated and concrete. So we need to sometimes simplify. And by simplifying things, I started working with PhD holders, with people who are in research. And I have so many editorials that are written about me. And I feel very humble and, I love it. But it's not why I'm doing that. I'm doing that because I realized my passion, the why that I'm here. And so I think just being curious about our why and why we want to be, to do what we do and how we can bring love to what we do as well. I love Rumi's quotes. He says, do not look for love because you are love. Just look for the places that you withhold it. So we have to look for the places that we withhold love. We have to not be stingy anymore with love. And we have to bring the simple things, everyday things that we do, and add a bit of love. Like I felt very, this morning I was so happy that I was going to connect with you. And yet this is our first time of meeting because I love what I do.
It shows.
And I love connecting with you and with people.
And you joining at 7:30 in the morning. I'm beyond grateful that you were able to wake up that early.
No, absolute pleasure.
Just to inspire us, and I love that you're holding space for us.
Yeah, totally, totally.
I'm so grateful that you
absolutely. And look, I'm here, and the world has now become so small. I think we're a global world, and amazing. You're from America, I'm from Australia, and we have listeners in around the world, which is such an incredible, opportunity for all of us to grow. And, anybody who is interested in my coaching, is interested in my book, is like, yes, please, connect. And let's grow together as women, but also as leaders. And I want to, let every woman know that she is, a leader with no title. Even if you don't have a title, you are a leader in your own right. Any woman who is, my mother used to say, you're a woman, you are a mother, whether you have a child or not. Yeah. So because you have a womb, So we are the carriers of life, and, our stories, our projects are part of the things that we bring to this world, because we all want to grow together and create a better world for everyone. I think it's about time.
How do you describe your women leaders?
How do I describe?
Your women leaders. The leaders in your book.
My women leadership is one, the rawness, the raw that I talk about, but the other one is with love. And again, love is an acronym. I think as a leader, the best part of being a leader or being an incredible leader is being a really deep listener. So the first letter of love, I call it a listener. And the second one is to be an observer and with no judgment. Because I think judgment is what, takes away from mostly what, we bring to the world. And we do need judgment in, important things and the way we judge. And our mind is naturally analytical and it judges. But as a leader, I think just, be an observer and just, do not judge and validate. So what am I listening to, observing and validating? The human emotion. The last E is emotion. So as a leader, if someone really angry comes at you, what do? If you listen deeply to their complaint and you do not, you observe with no judgment and you validate their anger, that person is validated. They feel that they're heard. And all we're looking for in these times is to be validated and to be heard. So that's a way of loving each other. And most of all, though, love yourself. This is the best part. I think sit with yourself and be a deep listener, an observer and validator of your emotions. When an emotion comes up for you, you're angry or you feel certain something is not sitting right with you, validate that emotion and find why it's there. Because once it's validated, it will let you know why it's there. So that's how I feel like I'm hopefully a good leader and one that really validates herself but validates others as well.
Wow. I can talk to you forever.
I know.
Do you feel fulfilled with your work you've done so far?
Totally. But I am, as a human being, we're always in motion. We're always dynamic and we want more. I feel like I am fulfilled in the space that I am in at the moment, but I want to do more. I want to go back home now and, create some projects and collaborate with, people in, different parts of Africa. I have one of the amazing things that came out of my journey is connecting with Africans in Australia from many parts of Africa. Yeah. So I am friends now with Zambians and Sierra Leoneans and, Liberians from Ghana, from South Africa. So I am so rich in relationship. So, connecting is one of my highest goals, connection, because it's everything. When you're connected, and especially you're connected to people who are, have the same mind and want to do the same things and have the same values, then, you can do so much together. And life just becomes very joyful.
What are you working on right now? How can we support you? I know I know you have a website. How else can we support you in all the amazing things that you're doing?
Well, one, I'm a storyteller. I am, a life coach. You can support my work by inviting me to your organizations, as a speaker, as a storyteller, as a person that you want to hold space for some of your teams. I can do that. And also, I do executive coaching for organizations that want to support their clients. I have book, but I'm also writing my second book, and I don't know if the title will be the same, but the book that I'm writing at the moment is I Choose to Thrive. So I believe that we can thrive in the times that we live in. There are a lot of challenges in life always, but when we transcend those challenges, I think we can open the doors of our own reservoir. And the reservoir always is within us, and the resources that we need are in us. The only thing that we need to learn is to be resourceful enough to connect with that, reservoir, and to bring those resources into the world, because each and every one of us is a genius and has an incredible and amazing story. And when they bring their genius or they're part of the puzzle for the world, it's needed in these times to create the wholeness of what we want to achieve together. So and reach out to me as well, and just as Nancy did, and I'm happy, to support whoever that is needing my support in the ways that I can. So thank you
for that. I'll have everything in the show notes, your contact, and how else they can reach you. It'll be all in the show notes so everybody can have access. I had so many questions for you, and you answered them along the way as you were talking.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, I've been very excited because when I was reading your bio on LinkedIn, and then I also went to your website reading your daughter's story, who I would love to have actually on here. Like you said, she has her own story to tell. Just the amazing duo that you guys have. And I love that you have a page where it says mother-daughter duo. I love that.
Yes.
I love that. And it's work. I have my daughter. It's work every day to unlearn some of my African ways. Yes. And integrate both, I guess, the American ways and their African ways without putting too much on her and her brother, I should say.
And I would add to that, I think our human ways, I think we are so, programmed in so many, because there's the white supremacy, especially in, coming from our African countries and colonialism and all that. It's so much to unpack. And I think we cannot do it as if we look at it as, one component after another. I think the idea is to really connect with your story and go at this particular moment, what is the story that I want to create for myself? And that I'm rightfully person in sovereign freedom. And that's why I chose to give the tool of faith, because it's, whoever, regardless who you are, when you use this tool of faith, you can activate that power in yourself. And no one can jail you. No one can tell you how to live your life. So you become someone who is literally, you even understand the power of reverence, because you learn to respect yourself, but you respect other people as well. And you become someone who adds to what the world needs. Mm-hmm. So that's the times. And as a gardener myself, I love gardening, and I'm very much among people who love, to bring sustainability and climate change and all that. So there's a term used called ecofeminism. And I think, that ecofeminism means that you sit at that intersection and you see all the disparities that exist for us, that has been created and programs, and how we can dismantle these programs from our systems, and how we can start to be kind to not only the earth, but the people in it and the animals in it, and that we can become holistic in our journey of becoming whole and, creating our own story. So the idea of being a victim and angry gets out of the way. So you now just activate that power in you. And so you don't have to go back and forth of, this has been you let go of that story, because after COVID, I think there's a whole new world that has emerged. And so how can we gently come into this world? How can we be gentle enough with ourselves? As you say, when we are learning things, it needs that gentleness, because it's really painful. And so looking at the pain, not dwelling so much on it, but releasing it. I think just becoming alchemists in a way that are transformers. And that is, why I'm so very excited about this, because this is the time, and we don't have to do the hard work that we used to.
I look forward to the new book, Choosing to Thrive. I think it's going to be a good read and a lot of teachable moments, I can tell already. What inspires you? What gets you all this energy in the morning? It's 8:40 over there now, and it's 4:41 here. Oh my God, in the afternoon. What inspires you? What gives you so much energy?
What excites me? I think life is exciting. On this side, I have a beehive, and I'm looking at the bees and how excited they are. So bees teach me so much. Like when we connect with nature, and nature is such a powerful teacher. So I observe, the little things. I think, you become, when you're in nature, you become Alice in Wonderland. You just become that small thing, and you look at a bee and you see yourself in their journey. Yeah. And you look at a bee, and when a bee is flying, every morning it just flies from its hive and it just finds a flower. And all it does, it doesn't even disturb the petals of the flower. It just goes on the nectar. That's all it needs to be at the nectar. And it's innate. But by doing that, the bee, as a byproduct, kind of pollinates our crops. Without bees, we do not have food. So it pollinates our crops, but it also gives us honey. And those are byproducts. Mm-hmm. So for me, speaking with you today, Nancy, is a byproduct, because I already, early morning, I work on my system. I wake up, I'm a woman of faith. I pray and I meditate, and I'm already, oh my God, I'm excited. I wonder what's in store for me this morning. And then things like this happen, an email like yours just lands on my inbox and says, can you come on my show? So that's even how I get my work. Like people just invite me to have, speaking engagement or that. And the byproduct is that I just get to, to have fun. So it's really incredible. And I think connecting with self and being creative. I think we have to find the creativity, the creative side of ourselves, because when we're not creative, it's like we're not alive. Yeah. And the last one is celebrate along the way. Every little bit of thing that you do for yourself, acknowledge it, validate it, and celebrate. So those are my 3 words. Connection, creation, and celebration. I make sure that I have those 3 in my life.
So this is my second last question for you. There's so many women around the world that have gone through what you've gone through. And especially when it came to 9/11, I came in 2002. and there was still the scarcity around it. Like you look at a Muslim woman wrapped up, you could tell without any words that even when they're getting into the train, I think even till today, there's still that fear. What would you tell those women around the world? Because 9/11 happened here, and there's been a lot of tragedy that happened in other countries like the UK and just around the world. What would you tell those women or men also that are still scared because they are Muslim, because of whatever happened that they have nothing to do with?
Yeah. I think it comes back to, people will judge you and make assumptions about you. But I think that is when people judge you and make assumptions of you, it's sometimes a reflection of a story that you're carrying inside. And I saw that in my journey because when I was angry, I saw angry people around me. And when it became, when I started to understand, I was like, oh my God, I wonder what I'm angry about today. I have a lot of angry people around me. And then just, learning to connect with our feelings and learning to know what story are we carrying inside. Because our mind is the one that really cages us. The prison is in our minds. The fear is in our mind. So sometimes, as much as we would like, and and it is like out there is a lot of racism, there's a lot of hatred. Yeah. But that hatred is, learning how to really feel and say, am I contributing to that? Because if I am part of it, if someone is hating me and I'm hating them back, then I'm contributing to it. But when I transform my thinking and I transform how I feel, then it's incredible because your life transforms. You totally think that you are in a different world because even the people around you who are haters and all that drop, they disappear from your life. Mm-hmm. Whether that is family or friends. And sometimes I think we suffer because we are clinging to something that we know and we don't want to let go. So I think it's the surrender and the letting go of the things that you're clinging to. Sometimes it's, our beliefs. Sometimes it's, just having that mirror for yourself. Yeah. And looking from inwardly out and finding the kindness to forgive. One of the things that is really profound for me in my journey is that I have seen a lot of atrocities in my life. Even when I was 7 years old, we went through at the time we were living in Uganda, and we went through the civil war and the Somali civil war, and I have seen the unkindness and the atrocities that man can commit against each other. But what surprised me is how when you meet a stranger and that stranger does a small kind thing, how it unravels all those hatred or all those things that you've held as being, that you just kind of feel, wow, this is so fresh, this is so beautiful. I want to be kind, So it's that invitation to kindness, to compassion, and to understanding. If someone is even hateful, just try and understand or find a way in which in your heart you can send him an energetic hug or an energetic forgiveness. I know that it's hard when you're living that truth, but it's always good to find the respite within ourselves, because the outside world will not give you respite. Happiness and everything is generated from inside of you. So learning to cultivate those, start being a gardener and, metaphorically see your mind as your garden and always weed out the negativities and plant in seeds of, yeah, whatever seeds that will give you that kind of respite and that is needed in the place you are at that time.
Thank you for sharing that.
A long answer to a simple question.
No. The world of being an immigrant and being a refugee.
Yes.
It's very different. But I'm so grateful that you were able to, explain to us. Yes or no answer. Have you healed from everything that has transpired in your life? Have you been able to heal?
To heal. Okay. So healing, what does that even mean? I think we are constantly healing. We're constantly, because as long as we are on this sweet earth, I think we will have kind of like, things that will pain us. I have 5 children. My eldest is 34. My youngest is 23. I live in this world. I have many friends. I have families. I have all that. So have I healed from the things that I came from? Yes, because I have let that go. But the process of healing and the process of, being more and growing continues. There is no, I have healed and that's the end of it. There is no destination to our life, and we will keep having, hardships. This is a dual world and we will bump on each other. But I think I've learned to forgive. I have learned to let go in a way.
Beautiful. All right. You've done so much. And again, I'm so grateful that you were able to get up super early to be here with us. Have you found your concrete pastures?
Yes, I have, in a way. I have found my concrete pastures. And I think that, in these pastures, I am also being a path maker, making paths for younger women, for elder women, for us all to go through. I think it's a time that, we have to make these concrete pastures as we, as designers and curators. Yeah. And making them as we go, And look, as African women, I think we're very creative. We're blessed with an incredible heart that is absolutely compassionate. And let's design and curate and make our concrete pastures together from this. I feel that in the Raw Garden, we have a really beautiful water feature, and that water feature is like a big vase of like a cup, and it has an overflow. And that's what my symbolism for women is, give from the overflow. Never ever give from something that, and learn to say no. I think that's we've been cast in a way because we don't know how to say no. I think learning how to have our own boundaries and saying no, which I still have some reservations, by the way, too, is an important thing.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, me too.
That's it for this episode. Thank you again for lending us your ears. It's truly an honor to serve each and every dreamer. You can continue to support us by liking, sharing, and following us on our social media pages. The links are all in the show notes. We have so many exciting projects and ventures in store for you. Until next time, keep dreaming.
Born and raised in the motherland, chasing a better life. Story of an immigrant.
Concrete pastures.
Concrete pastures.
Concrete